Hey guys, welcome back to the Casual NBA Fanatic podcast. Now, today's weekly podcast, we're kind of just going through three topics that I'm very excited to hit off. And one of them stemming from the new types of videos I've been trying to make, which you might have seen on anywhere you get your social media feed, TikTok, your Instagram, YouTube Shorts. It's more just like the multi-angle types of videos I'm trying to make, the real types of content for my breakdowns. And the first one I did was actually about Dennis Rodman versus Draymond Green. I didn't quite hint off who I would take in the video itself and in the caption, which I'm sure most of you, if you guys even saw the video, wouldn't have even have read it. But I did state how I am a bigger fan of Draymond Green in this argument. And so basically with the new format in the video, I just want to quickly break down the why, just more so why I would take Draymond Green, because I actually think this debate is ultra close. And on the poll that I put down in the video, I think it was 51 to 49% leaning towards Draymond Green. Like, it was neck and neck, and we're legit splitting hairs here when it comes, for my argument too. Either way, honestly, last time I did my all-time rankings, I haven't updated them for about a year, but would have had Dennis Rodman for sure above him. With just viewing things a little bit differently, I kind of would probably take Draymond as of right now, and I just wanted to kind of list out my reasons why. Because, again, a very ultra close debate. These are two guys of basically the same archetype, just in different eras of NBA basketball. Same personalities, even if you want, for their eras too. And so, just with this debate as well, the inspiration for the video, I saw an argument between Brandon Jennings and I think it was Kenyon Martin and one of the other guys on Gil's Arena, and they were just arguing in a pretty casual manner about who they prefer, Draymond Green or Dennis Rodman, all time, and who had just the greater career, the greater impact on the league. And I think Brandon Jennings was defending Draymond Green, and I think he had Nick Young by his side as well. But then the older guys were more respectful of what Dennis Rodman did in his career. But specifically speaking, though, this is totally subjective. It's more subjective to also which era you value more, but also just what you value in general as a basketball player. For me, I just think after that fourth title in Golden State, I think as a complete staple in the actual system for four titles spanning nearly 8 years straight, between their four titles or whatever it was, that's why I probably lean towards Draymond Green. I just think that longevity of greatness to a franchise is something that gives him a bit more lenience in this debate, but also just the gap for them as players. It is extremely close and it is split by the smallest of hairs. And these are two guys that I probably scale around the 65 to 70th players of all time if you did a consensus view. But I just think when you go for the talent argument here, I just think Draymond Green actually clears that aspect pretty effortlessly. Now, obviously Dennis Rodman, he had the athletic advantage in this debate, but he had nothing to what Draymond Green could do in terms of the skill-wise and just the cognitive aspects as well on the offensive side of the ball. So obviously, skill will always improve era to era or completely. And Draymond Green, by any standard, might not be considered a skilled basketball player, but when you consider what he can do on the floor with the cognitive speed, as well as also the skills with the passing, with the screening, angling, and then also just the basic shot making that he could do in his prime years too, the ball handling perks that you get from him as your power forward center, that's skill. And that's where I find the gap between these two guys. Whether or not you say Rodman was better defensively or not, that's up to you. I just think the gap in their offensive value, regardless of what era, I just think that's no debate here. Draymond, we're talking about literally one of the greatest facilitating forwards the game has ever seen. And we're talking about elite bullet passing. We're talking about decision-making, hyper speed. We're talking about floor general communication at the highest level. So continuous screening and just movement value continuously. Maybe the GOAT of 4-on-3 level reads coming out of pick and roll, coming off his 1A blitzes, that the gravity that Stephen Clay could grab that attention as well in pick and roll. So maybe the greatest in terms of capitalizing on those simple advantages in those prime Warriors years as well when they were winning those titles, even the years before KD got there as well. So just everything he does facilitating the floor makes him one of the greatest in that aspect, regardless of position as well. You can compare him to the greatest point guards of all time in terms of facilitating offense on the floor. This guy was effortless and he always wreaked value at every single second on any offensive possession. And that's what makes Draymond Green extremely special. And in his prime as well, this is also another differentiator between the two. But we're talking about like a legitimate spacing threat. Someone who was producing at a pretty exceptional level, and he was like literally one of the best two-way anchors in the NBA. And obviously more of a modern day offensive anchor with how he used to control stuff from the top of the key, like your Sabonis's might usually do. And I say anchor in this case because he completely coordinated the offense with Steph, and he stabilized their decision-making process. Which, either way you look at it, for a championship level team, just that all-time transcendent offense that he was able to coordinate, that is absolutely remarkable. And in 2016 as well, we're talking about a guy that averaged 14 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 stocks on 55% effective field goal percentage in 2016, all right? And that included him splashing in 39 of his threes on over 3 attempts a game in 2016. This isn't 2025 standards. This is 2016. There is a gap between what we were expecting from your bigs at that point in time as well. We're talking about a guy in 2016, again, finished 7th in MVP voting, 2nd in the Defensive Player of the Year race, All Defensive First Team, and All NBA Second Team. And this is all whilst contributing to a 73-9 regular season team who lost in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. And they lost by an absolute hair, 4 points. Just that peak individual season as well. Like, obviously, greatness, a lot of it's to do with longevity and how much you actually did in your career. But when we are talking about also your peak as well, I think Draymond takes the cake here. And, like, I don't think you ever find, like, a peak individual season like Draymond's 2016 year, or even if you want to take 2017, because they actually won the title that year as well. You can argue he was just as impactful as just KD came to the team as well. Like, you just don't find that anywhere in Rodman's career. And, like, we're talking about legitimately the second most impactful and most valuable player on a 73-win regular season team and a complete dynasty of the 21st century. Like, what he did can't go understated. Like, people look at the stats, oh, he's averaging 8, 8, and 8. He's not doing anything. He's averaging 8, 7, and 6. He's not doing anything special. That's regardless. Like, you got to watch what this guy does on the floor every single night, which is super impactful. And then the next point, like, you talk about defense. But to me, like, I genuinely think these guys are pretty close. Because obviously, yes, you can argue Dennis was more talented defensively in terms of just being that defensive archetype and that pest. But Draymond has clearly been arguably the clear best defender of this generation alone when you go through a team success standpoint, but then also an individual dominance and then a sustained, consistent longevity standpoint as well. All those 3 markers he's ticked off in this generation to be the GOAT defender. We're talking about a guy with 6 top 5 DPOY finishes and 9 all defensive selections with a defensive player of the year to go along with it. And this is obviously all resume based as well. But like when we actually get into like defensive talent as well, when we actually get into it as well, you'll see that the gap isn't that big. Draymond, just one of the weirdest guys. He just has some knack for literally blowing up and making offensive actions so much harder to execute in the half court because he literally shuts off team-wide advantages at such an obscene level. Like, he shuts off rolling impact as an exceptional help side timing-based guy. You know, he's a guy that shuts off post value because he can, like, with his ability to actually absorb strength, absorb power, cover outlet passing lanes out of the post, maintain disciplined vertical contesting structure as well. You know, he's got enough mobility as well to be able to match and absorb the blows that, you know, post bigs can throw in terms of their spins and drop steps. You know, he can actually meet them to spots in the post because of the mobility and the foot speed advantages he naturally has there because he is undersized. He's someone that provides like insane mobility, but also just the insane timing and decision making as a drop coverage big. Someone that, you know, against pull-up jump shooters can bait the most inefficient looks. Everything's based on efficiency on the offensive end, but that totally matches everything he does defensively, giving up what he thinks is the least valuable shot for the opposing team continually. He's a guy that wipes off cutters, switches any ball screen if it doesn't jeopardize his guards. You know, one of the best like blitzing, like base blitzers that you'll get in the NBA from your big man position. Someone who's just got, like when he's actually blitzing you in terms of just those incoming hands, the constant lateral pitter-patter activity as well for his position. You just don't find that across the league. And like quite literally, like as a help side defender too, like in the modern NBA, this guy's legit achieved the highest of heights in defensive value. And so, like, when you talk about the mobility, again, I'm going to keep talking about the mobility, but he was playing the power forward position at like 6'5", 6'6". So you're going to have those advantages, and they were so valuable in a league that is so spaced out. Your ability to actually get to different spots in faster speeds is so valuable in today's era. And that's why those mobility advantages blended with the most perfected anticipation and the most perfected, like, literal just timing of any of his contests, any of his step-ups, any of his gap coverages. That's why he is, at least to me, the most valuable defensive anchor of the decade. And I don't think the gap between value between Dennis and Draymond is that big. Talent is a different perspective, because obviously Dennis Rodman's a freak athlete and just got, maybe even like a bit like a greater motor than Draymond Green. But in terms of the value to his era, Draymond Green matches Dennis Rodman, if not easily surpasses it. It's a lot harder to be a defensive anchor in Dennis's or Draymond's specific archetype in the 2020s, 2010s than it was in the 90s, where it's mostly just like stopping post-centric basketball. And so, like, I'm not having any dig, because what Dennis did in his time was just as valuable as what Draymond could do in this time. I just think it's a little bit harder to do what Draymond did for his defensive career. And so, just racking off that, I know I just went through a massive loop, but that talent, like, so by talent-wise, I just don't see the argument between these two guys when we are talking about what they could do on the floor as basketball players. And obviously Rodman's case, so, like, I'm not just going to like overpass like everything he did, but his case is pretty special in this one. Like, there's a reason it's so close. Like, the resume honestly might stack up a bit more. He's got the extra championship as well. But when you're talking about just simply being, again, the Draymond Green of his era, when you just talk about the same types of principles of value that he brought to the game at a lower usage rate, different things he had to focus on to provide value on the margins, that's why they are so similar. And the thing is, though, like, I give Draymond his props with talent-wise, because the ball handling, the passing, the facilitation, the initiation skill set. But the thing is, ball handling at the power forward position was just never valued in Dennis Rodman's time anywhere near the level it was right now. And just that same elite passing value and the continuous offensive involvement, that just wasn't expected, from the teams and roles that he played for, from especially Detroit and Chicago, where he did get the ultimate success. And that's why, obviously, for Dennis, leaving those extra duties, like, he was a capable passer, but leaving those duties to better and more suited players is simply why Rodman probably won more titles than Draymond has in his career as well. Also, for the fact that he's played for two different dynasty teams as well. Draymond's stuck with the same dynasty. But Dennis did match Draymond's individual value for his time, really, for the most part, by excelling in another facet. So you drop the offensive qualities and you add in the other facet, the other trait that made Dennis Rodman just so unbelievable. And obviously, that facet, and he's probably the GOAT of it, that's obviously rebound. Now, Dennis in his career, 7 rebounding titles. 7. Like, nearly a decade. Like, this dude finished his last 10 years in the NBA averaging 16 rebounds a game. That's for an entire decade of NBA basketball towards the end of his career. And in the 90s as well, only one other player in that whole decade ever hit the glorious 15 rebounds a game mark for an entire season. And, like, if you have any guesses of who that was, I'd be a little bit surprised if you get it on first thought as well. It's not Dikembe, it's not Hakeem, it's not David Robinson, it's Kevin Willis. And he did it once in 1992. He averaged just basically 15 rebounds a game. But Dennis in the 90s did that 6 different times. And, like, just dominance in that specific trait at a time where it was valued more than ever. And so, like, for the, again, relative to their eras, what Dennis brought to the game, along with the defensive versatility, like, also just the mind games, the constant pesky hand activity, the continuous battling for positioning and denying positioning out of the post, the freakish low post motor that you'll never find from any other player in NBA history. That's why Dennis's literal value and impact was very comparable to peak Draymond Green. I probably take, though, that peak version of Draymond. But over their careers, they provided very similar values overall. And that's why for the differentiator, it is the peak for me. Draymond's peak years, like, if you want to say it was between 2015 to 2017, that 3-year span to me was just more impressive as an individual talent than anything that Dennis did for any concentrated period of time. And I say that with the conclusion as well that like Draymond at his peak was actually in discussions as a top 10 player in the world. In that 2016 to 2017 range, if you go through rankings, just basic rankings, what maybe even ESPN did, like he was in truly undeniable superstar impact conversations. I've seen him get ranked 9th, 10th in the world back when you go look back at like what people perceived back then. And to be honest, you'd find it hard finding any in Rodman's career where he did match that level of greatness as a player. And so that's why my main argument here, like because the resumes are very, very similar in weight, like especially when you consider like the offensive impact numbers that Draymond was churning out compared to, Dennis adding up the rebounds, it's very, very similar. But these are also the greatest role-playing guys in the history of the league, if you can even call them that. And so these are two guys that both won basically like half a decade of NBA championships each. 5 for Dennis, 4 for Draymond. But these are guys who basically provided the same value in the same positions in different eras for separate championship level squads. For me though, just the 14 years that Draymond Green has been able to be, like the amount of value the Warriors have gotten over 14 years of Draymond's career, I just don't think Rodman, for the fact that he never gave that to any one franchise as well, I just think Draymond's legacy has surpassed Rodman's with the slightest edge. Now we're done with that argument. That took a fair bit of time. But also, I want to hear what you guys think about that. Like, obviously, it's extremely close. Like, Dennis also has an incredible reputation as well as being a pest, the antics as well. Very similar to what Draymond's done in this era as well, but it just depends on what you overall value. A lot of people love the rebounding statistics and also just the rebounding impact. And then when you also consider his size as well in the game, either way you look at it, like I could very much pivot and make a huge argument as to why I think Dennis deserves that all-time slot above Draymond, but this is just the way that I view it now. Maybe it's recency bias because I'm still watching Draymond. I've watched Draymond for my life. I wasn't alive for Dennis Rodman's peak years, as you can probably tell. But just off what I have watched and what I know about the NBA in different eras, I'm going to take Draymond. Now, moving on, we have the Trae Young trade, which took place, I think it was 2 days ago now, but it was pretty anticipated. And I think as soon as the Wizards rumors were heating up, would have been within like the week, we saw him actually land there. And he's already in those new threads as we speak. But with this Trae Young trade, so obviously we've all heard about it. The Hawks gave up Corey Kispert and CJ McCollum straight up just to get Trae Young. To me, I think I would have had him top 30 to 35, I want to say, in the NBA in total. But this trade was inevitable. And like whether it happened this year, at the deadline, in the offseason, heck, even like a few years down the line, this trade for both parties had to happen for like the mutual benefit of both parties. Like Trae's playstyle had to be blended with either super high tier athletes who could compete on the margins or super high physicality. And the Hawks' identity obviously shifted towards more of that athletic route. Like that's where you see guys like, that's where the Hawks were actually prioritizing guys like Jalen Johnson, Zachary Reese, Dyson Daniels, Onyeka Okongwu, Vee Krejci, even Clint Capella and DeJounte Murray when they were there as well. Even more so at the start of this year when you see guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker getting brought in, guys like Muhammad Gay getting minutes in the past few years, Ace Newell getting drafted, Keaton Wallace's minutes bumping up year by year as well. These are all highly athletic guys, not as much physically imposing. So that's the route that they picked as well. So we're talking about the athletic and rangy mold. But I just think over time, Trae's lack of like those like specific rangy and athletic traits themselves, just the slower paced initiation style that he usually like sticks to. And like it's a slower paced style. Like I'm not saying Trae's a slow player by any means. It's a slower paced way of trying to create offense compared to like what you're seeing from teams like what we saw early in the season with Chicago, what we saw last year with Indiana, still with Indiana right now, who continually run and press transition basketball as much as they can. And just that overall heliocentric half-court style that we've seen from Trae ever since he entered the league, which is basically like 7.5, 8 years now since he's entered the league. We've seen this specific style in Atlanta. I just think that constant year-by-year heavy dose of pick and roll that we continually saw, that overall limited the overall ceiling that an athletic-leaning offense could potentially hit. So I just think the identity shift makes a lot of sense for Trae to make his exit right now, for also his point of view as well. And like that heliocentric style, like you might bring it up. So people that most fit that, not exactly that they play to that as much as Trae did, but guys that do naturally play with that inclination for heliocentric style. You have your Traes, Lukas, maybe Austin Reeves from time to time when he's playing without LeBron and Luka, Cade Cunningham for a large portion of the time as well. And so basically, when a team that is so designated to just one offensive playmaker, that just limits the full focus around, things like transition pushes, high-paced motion offense, and that's stuff that we've seen prevail in recent history as well. And like, again, think about what Indiana were able to do last year. Think about what teams like Miami this year have been able to do, the results that they've been able to achieve with their offense, again, with very, very limited personnel. And I'm not saying like Trae is he can't thrive in a higher paced system than what he's been playing recently, but just the way that his connection was to Atlanta, I just think like with the way that they built the roster around him and the freedom that they gave him as well, that was his blueprint for playing in Atlanta as a 1A option. And like, I just think like, obviously like I am actually pretty big Trae like believer. I'd like to say like, I think he's an exceptional basketball player and he can like play relatively faster than guys like your Luka and Cade's in consistent spurts as well. Like he plays with more speed. He leverages that speed advantage, obviously more so than guys like Luka, Cade, and Austin Reeves. But I just think that will need to be focused more so when he does go to another high-paced environment like Washington. He's got to play a bit faster than he usually tends to do and not drag these games into just completely half-court regular season offense, because that's not how you churn out high regular season wins in the 2020s, in the mid-2020s now. And Washington as well, like the situation he's about to go to, they're building around high motor offensive talent. And so like I have no doubt like Trae will dig more into that fully high-paced offense, like we've seen the greatest offensive creators go through now, because he isn't a transcendently unstoppable and mismatch independent, like he's not a matchup resilient sort of scorer like a Shea. So we can't drag games into the half court as well, and he's not overly dominant. So you've got to stick to winning the margins, like guys like Josh Giddey, like the offensive results even he's been able to put together for what we may have perceived of him before the start of the season as well. Like you just got to play a little bit smarter for the regular season and just make the game easier for your team, not just yourself. And I think when he goes to Washington, I have no doubt that he will, but the move for like this actual trade to me was just addressing a relationship that was positive on balance from both parties, but something that just grew very, very stale. And like the other point of it is like all teams go through major identity shifts when they see the success that other teams achieve. And like they see their own results. Like the Hawks have completely stagnated and plummeted, obviously since 2021 when they made that Eastern Conference Finals appearance. And like that's when they took the eventual chance, the Bucks, to 6 games. But year by year since then, they've never made a real attempt to throw a truly fitted secondary star next to Trae, like considering his playstyle and the glaring limitations that he brings to the game. Like they've never put a true secondary player around him. And instead of doing that though, they haven't just done like nothing with him. Instead of picking a second star, they preferred stacking on higher quality role players who just would slot willingly into his preferred playstyle. And that just didn't work out. Obviously, to be an eventual champion, you need a fit to both. So obviously you do try find a second star and then you add those high level role players on the side, but they just couldn't do either. Like they couldn't do both of them at the same time. They went for the role player outlook. That's how I view things. And if you look at like the second stars that they did try pair with him, like John Collins, average defender. Again, Trae's limitations, remember this. John Collins, average defender, not super physical or super capable as an alternate like shot creator when he was actually in Atlanta. Yes, he was a nice vertical spacing fit as like a nice pick and roll lob finisher, but he didn't have the extra traits to make that pairing a super high championship quality ceiling. And like we know how the DeJounte Murray experiment went, another high volume perimeter ball handler just didn't fit the play style for Trae Young in any way, especially when you are considering these are two bad off-ball players. That didn't work. Clint Capella was there for a long time. He was very valuable for that run of time that he was in Atlanta, especially when they did make the conference finals appearance. But he was planets away from being a secondary star in terms of the firepower department. And even Jalen Johnson, even in his time, he's very young now. I have no doubt Jalen Johnson, fast forward 3 years' time, that fit would be extremely great. But even Jalen Johnson was pretty flawed when you are viewing him as a second fiddle to a championship team when the ball is mostly out of his hands. Because at this point in time, when you, again, consider that we are pairing him next to Trae Young, he needs to cover for Trae's limitations and his play style, fit the holes that Trae doesn't bring to the game. Again, Jalen's not the most physically based shot creator. He's athletically imposing, but not yet that Giannis, Zion, LeBron type of physically imposing driving creator. And yes, that's a very high standard to hold him to, especially such a young guy. I'm comparing to some of the most, the greatest physical specimen of our game right now. But that's the reality of what you need when you are seated next to Trae Young to reach a championship quality ceiling with such a flawed and overall pretty limited 1A option, which is Trae. Think about how stacked and how great you need to be a championship quality team. And Atlanta's been so far from that ceiling year by year. I would have had them maybe 10th on my championship contenders before the season started. And that was when they were healthy because of the Porzingis deal as well. I didn't know Trae was going to get injured and look pretty shabby when he did play as well. Atlanta was far from it from those years as well. So having a guy like a Giannis would lift them to championship quality. Anything below a Giannis, heck, even below a Zion, you're not reaching a championship ceiling when you're next to Trae Young. You need all the firepower that you can get. Jalen, to me, is the better option to build around, but as a second fiddle to someone who's always going to have the ball in his hands more, make more of the offensive half-court decisions. I just think Jalen Johnson wasn't as physically built and capable just yet for the playoffs to match what Trae can't bring to the game. And so for both parties, again, I know I'm more delving into Atlanta's side of the ball. I haven't thought about too much for Washington's side. But for both parties, they gave this relationship their absolute best go. And I think it was best for both teams to pull the plug, at least now. Atlanta, they're definitely going to benefit, with the ability to go all out for another start if, they look to move Porzingis. I think AD was rumored in a Porzingis deal maybe. Porzingis has barely played this year as well, a bit disappointing so far. But this was a future move for Atlanta. And as for Trae as well, Washington is a pretty funky development place at the moment, which if coached through the right system, and if they can develop, if they can get these fast developing habits on track right now, they could really turn into at least a play-in threat by next year. And, Trae hopefully will finally get consistent time as well next to a fully diversified offensive anchor prospect in Alex Sarr, who has been pretty terrific this year so far, considering what we were thinking about him last year. And Trae's never had that consistent time with, again, a diversified, fully skilled offensive anchor before, in my opinion. KP barely played. Clint Capella never reached that skill. Onyeka Okongwu, he took a fair while before he actually got real playing time, when he actually had some sort of that skill. Alex Sarr brings more ball handling chops that I'm more confident in my opinion. And so for both parties, Washington, they get an exceptional offensive table setter who will lead at least respectable base offense for an offense that is just completely filled with an array of inexperienced talent. And then you also have the Hawks as well, and what they get out of it. They get their identity shift that they've been needing for nearly 10 years, the identity shift that they've always wanted for the past few months. Definitely the biggest trade that we've seen in a few months' time anyways, but hopefully not the last that we'll see. But definitely a trade that was pretty significant because it marked the end of a franchise's relationship with their 1A, which spanned surprisingly nearly a decade of NBA basketball from 2018 to 2026. Now, just past that, we're going to go to our third topic of the day. And it's probably my favorite topic of the week. It involves the Eastern Conference teams again, not Atlanta and Washington, but the two teams that are probably on top by reputation right now. And that question really is, who do you think the king of the East is right now? Two things, Detroit and New York, and then the other thing is Cade and Brunson themselves. So this is our last topic of the day, but again, we got this debate going as well. But last week, we got one of the biggest statement games that you'll ever get from Detroit basketball. Cade Cunningham and the Pistons absolutely tore the Knicks to absolute shreds in Little Caesars Arena last week. And this was off a back-to-back for Detroit as well against a rested Knicks team. And the Pistons just absolutely kicked their ass 121-90. That's a 30-point demolition job, which was done mostly through their defense, but also just how they flexed everything of their physical athleticism advantage in every possible way, every possible manner you could have imagined for a regular season game. And mind you, this was without Jalen Duren too. So this is without one of their all-stars. This is just full Isaiah Stewart, full Paul Reed center minutes, which to be honest as well for me, I don't think that's much of a downgrade from what Detroit aimed to do, physically harassing teams, physically harassing, I don't want to say soft, but lower motor centers like Karl Anthony Towns, That's where, we'll start off. The glass battle was brutal in this game. Detroit won the rebounds 44-30. And they just converted on their movement much better. And they had a 25-15 assist advantage in this one. And Cade himself basically matched the Knicks' distribution. He had 13 of his own assists compared to the Knicks' 15. And then you also get a 23-10 stock advantage. So just more activity on the defensive end just by the basic metrics itself. And then overall as well, the Pistons held the Knicks to a 96 offensive rating. That's 24 points under their season average. And they themselves posted a 130 offensive rating. And that's 13 points better than their typical standard. So just an absolute demolition job on both ends. But stats aside, the battle for me stemmed from, at the start of this game, it stemmed from the outclassing from Cade versus Brunson in that matchup, where I just thought Cade Cunningham just completely emphasized another aspect to his offensive coordination that Brunson just simply can't match. And that is the ability to table set the offense at a much better level, simply with the size and the vision advantages that he brings to the table that Brunson just inevitably will never be able to match himself. He's just too small statured for that type of level of coordinated table setting offense. Now, in this game specifically, these were and in general, these are two very focused floor-raising prospects as your 1As. And especially in a matchup like this, where each guy is just spamming high-dose pick and roll in slowed-down half-court sets to start the game. That is literal floor-raising. And Cade just rewarded his athletic cutters. He rewarded his roll men just more effectively throughout this game as well. So the team offense just came out a lot more polished than what Jalen Brunson was able to initiate for the Knicks out of those pick-and-roll sequences. And obviously the Knicks defense as well was just far from sharp in any way. Just no intensity in comparison to what Detroit's hellacious athletes were constantly hurling at the Knicks all game. And then also just Cade's ability to see over the top, distribute advantages all over the floor. That gave the Pistons just a much safer half-court setting. And in this game, just fully impressed. And this isn't a blowout, remember? 29 points, 13 assists, 74% effective field goal percentage. And when I say floor-raising battle, it's not just the pick and rolls, but it's also the fact that Cade himself had a 34% usage rate in this game. And basically, as much of the Pistons' possessions also came from, it was 34%. It probably would have been higher, if you're just concentrating half court, but a lot of their possessions just came off generated stops and transition, presser pushes from guys like Javonte Green, your Ron Hollins, your Jay Ivies, and so on. So that's why his usage rate wasn't greater. But Jalen Brunson boasted a 42% usage rate. So when they weren't getting much transition pressure, it's mostly in the half court, just fully Jalen Brunson initiating everything. But the comparative statistically that painted the actual difference was between their standards in games and just their efficiency outlook as well. So I say Cade, he would give you 29 points, 13 assists on 74% effective field goal percentage. Brunson in 30 minutes instead gave you 25 points, 3 rebounds, 0 assists, and 6 turnovers on 52% effective field goal percentage. So Brunson in this game, like obviously what led to that massive differentiation between their actual basic production standpoints, he was just absolutely suffocated the entire game. And the size, again, we talk about the size, so like those passing outlets just naturally aren't there to him. Like that'll inevitably always impede him and his ability to counter those shrinking defenses. And it's just like those passing angles, those passing outlets, they're just more restricted for him. And so against those really high level defenses, he will struggle more so to actually generate movement for the team when he is doing that completely floor-raising point of view. And like when we are like just comparing the 1As themselves and then also just comparing the surrounding casts around that, this is just an absolute outclassing from Detroit to New York from every single like perspective that you look at it. And though I still think the Knicks on balance probably have a quietly better chance at coming out of the East for now and maybe hoisting the trophy, I quietly think they do have a better chance. I just think the offense is a little bit more polished, especially if they can avoid a team like Detroit somehow in the postseason as well. I think they might have a better chance. But I do believe Brunson as well. Like, I do think the Knicks have a better chance, but also think Brunson is a more mature and capable shot creating 1A for a team. Right now, I think that could easily shift maybe by the time the playoffs hit as well with more maturity for Cade. Obviously, one game doesn't dictate who's a better basketball player on paper. But I just think the Pistons just have proven themselves to be a much more consistently committed regular season basketball team. And they showed that once again right now, just going in and absolutely whooping New York on their home floor. And so Cade, like home floor is in Detroit's home floor. And the thing is with Cade, like what makes him so impressive, again, like we're talking about a ceiling as an elite floor-raising prospect that continues to shine. And he's been one of the biggest story points for the NBA this year in general. He's been probably one of the 5 most impressive regular season players this season from what he's been able to do. And legit, like no one on the Knicks in this specific game had a chance at guarding him except for OG Anunoby. Like, and even in that matchup as well, Cade can actually attack certain slight angles as well in that matchup where he can eventually get some level of rim pressure reps in that matchup. And I just think a statement this huge on national television from Cade, but also just from Detroit, from the bench group as well, I think it was just absolutely embarrassing for New York. I think it exposed much of their motor issues, which still do ultimately undercut all of that polished skill and all the pretty regular season offensive system stuff that they can throw out there this season. Like it undercuts all of that when you can't play hard-nosed basketball against a team that really wants to dig down dirty through games. And like, again, it wasn't just the starters. Like we know Brunson got brutally outplayed. Like Cat got absolutely shredded in this game. Absolutely embarrassed. Like he himself, supposedly a shoo-in all-star for this year's game. He gives you 6 points and 6 turnovers, and he's in negative 27 in 22 minutes, and he takes 4 shots, 4 shot attempts. He makes 1 goal, 1 field goal the entire game. That's a joke. And like the pathetic motor and the amount that he was giving up on the glass himself, the deep post cutting catches that he was just giving up on the back line against simply just harder working bigs. Like he literally gave you 1 rebound in half a game of NBA basketball. The dude's, he's playing power forward to start this game, but he's a center. 1 rebound. Like that is a joke when you're getting outplayed by guys, again, on paper, like by name, guys like Paul Reed, Isaiah Stewart, absolutely dominating him, looking like tiers above of a better player than him in a game like this. That's embarrassing from the top down from your starters, but it was also the bench groups as well. Like this was, by any perspective you look at it, Detroit has absolutely destroyed New York in this one. I mentioned bench groups. Tyler Kolek and Jordan Clarkson, for the most part, just looked pretty rattled out of their typical element. Surprisingly, they might have been some of the biggest bright points, like not glaringly dark spots for New York in this game, but like just comparing them and what you get out of New York's bench compared to guys like Dennis Jenkins, Jaden Ivey, Javonte Green. even like Ron Holland and Marcus Sasser as well. Like, these are just young gunners that aren't afraid of anything, especially when it is the regular season. And they go out there and they give you 150% level intensity on both ends of the floor, and they continually just wreak havoc and constantly milk the margins so much as well. And then when you're also milking the margins to such a big degree, you talk about rebounding, passing the ball, transition pressure, and then you're also making 52% of your threes. That's where you, and like also like you're getting that with the demolition in transition and on the glass again. But that's when you get a blowout, and that's when you get a grade A embarrassment on national TV if you are New York. And like if you're a Knicks fan, like at this point, like I know I'm just kind of shitting on New York, and you know what this game might not have meant too much to them. They obviously did not take this game seriously whatsoever. That to me is a big sign. Maybe I'm making things bigger than they are. But if you're a Knicks fan, it's obviously about moving on. Like obviously they picked up the win against the Clippers, but there is a ton of work and habits that they still far from having cemented before they think they have a chance at winning the title. Again, you can be polished, you can have a nice regular season offensive system that will get you nice aggregate results, but in big statement games like this, you can't be having games like this. And like for me with New York, I still have them around that 6 to 8 range as league-wide contenders when you factor in both conferences. But when you compare them to a team that they probably strive to be like, and I think New York and Denver are pretty similar with what they do. Again, polished in terms of their offensive system, but also just talent advantage, like skill advantages across their personnel against most teams in the league. New York's extremely talented when it comes to, again, the skill, the shot making, being able to like actually play that motion offense, provide a ton of gravity on the floor with all the guys in the starting unit. But the thing is, Denver can at least commit to grinded out basketball. Like they can play scrappy against any of these types of teams like Detroit if it came to it. Like heck, they just got to win without their entire starting lineup against, you know, like this is just led from guys from their bench against a fully loaded and confident Philly squad on the road. And this is with Jalen Pickett as their best player in that game. Like Denver's hoisted the trophy and their DNA has championship success throughout, and they know what this is about. Like the Knicks just don't, like, you know, like yes, the Knicks have been routinely competitive in recent years, but at the end of the day, none of their guys besides OG Anunoby, and like he's hoisted the trophy, but none of their guys out of OG and Mikal Bridges know what it's like to have that true finals experience. And unless guys like Cat can start to commit to that very embedded role that he has as a big man in this league, like the Knicks just don't have much of a chance, in my opinion, to win the title just with efforts like these. And these are the real playoff testers in my eyes. You only get a fair few of these each year, and you want to hyper-focus on the ones that are in your conference. And Detroit's a healthy basketball team. You are a healthy basketball team. Boston's not. Cleveland's still trying to get in rhythm. Their lineup's still jagged from here to here in terms of health. These are the two healthy teams in the league. This was a playoff tester, and they completely failed this one. This doesn't really mean anything. We've still got over half a regular season to go of NBA basketball before we even get to the playoffs. But there's a lot of work that New York have to do, because at this point in time, if you throw them into a playoff series, I think what Detroit have harnessed with their habits right now, they would absolutely obliterate the Knicks. In my opinion, I just think if they were to go into a series tomorrow, by the end of the season, I expect it to be much closer. I'd probably still lean New York to win in 7 games, probably. It'll be a hell of a series, but they just have a lot of work to do. And the thing is, for me, if you're New York, you can't tick a box against what is, to be honest, a fairly decent matchup for you guys like San Antonio was. You can't just like win the NBA Cup, go through that, and then get brutally discarded against a team like Detroit in such an important matchup, an equally important matchup in my eyes. And this is within the same month span as well. And I think, like, obviously I'm probably overthinking it, but the way I'm viewing it, when Cleveland get healthy and in shape and in rhythm, I don't see why, with the way New York just played and the way they've, to be honest, been playing the last few weeks after that Christmas game, I don't see why Cleveland can't leapfrog them and why New York will be just left struggling to maintain an advantage over teams like Boston and Toronto, possibly Philadelphia. Like, these teams are all gunning a bit harder to me at the moment. But I say this, I'm probably overreacting because New York obviously proved that they can play a really high quality level of NBA basketball. That's why they won the NBA Cup. But this game just pissed me off a lot. As someone that does want to see the Knicks, because I'm a big Jalen Brunson believer, and not that this was Jalen Brunson's fault by any means, but I want to see Jalen Brunson, guys like OG Anunoby. I have so much respect for guys like Mikal Bridges, what Tyler Kolek's been able to become, what Jordan Clarkson's been able to do, what Mitchell Robinson's been able to do. It's one of the best role-playing bigs in the league. This is a very likable team. I want to see them do well. I love the Knicks fan base. I want them to succeed. They failed this one. They're going to look to the next playoff test that they have and try to hit that with full intensity this time. Now, that's all I had for today's episode. Now, I'll probably be coming back with one a week later. I'll be going away for a little bit, so I probably won't get one up until next weekend at some point in time. But this was very fun, just to pick like 3 big topics that I wanted just to go through. I know I went for a fair bit of time, 45 minutes. But obviously, it was all a bit of fun. This is the period of time where I think people tend to lose a bit more interest in the NBA right now, especially after the NBA Cup's gone, New Year's, Christmas Day basketball's all out of the way. The next patch where I think people will really get invigorated and teams will get more invigorated will be in that February stretch. I can't wait till we actually get to that point because I love competitive regular season basketball because the regular season is too long to have patches like these. But then again, it was all a bit of fun. I thank you guys for sticking along, and I'll catch you guys probably in the next episode, which will probably be coming out some point next week. Have a good one.